Chapter 6. Finish work, some cleats, tholes, and thole pins. This finish work in this section is my approach to finishing on this build specifically, but I'm far from an expert on fiberglass, paint, varnish. This is one of those areas where you talk to two boat builders and you get three opinions. It also depends greatly on your conditions. I keep my boat under a tarp in the desert, so I don't worry too much about rot. It starts with some epoxy work. I mix epoxy in a Ziploc bag, mix it for a couple minutes, and then add silica thickener until it's thick enough to pile on itself like a cement slump test. This means it won't run when you cut a corner in the bag and pipe it into gaps in a rudder or holes in the plywood faces, whether those holes are from knots or screws or whatever. Just that thickness keeps it put. Once the epoxy is cured, you can soften edges and sand to about 180 grit on the spars and boards to clean them up with the wet rag before you put a couple coats of varnish on them. Some might argue to epoxy the boards, but I don't leave mine in the water for extended periods of time, and mine hold up pretty good. I used a black roof sealant to seal the hatch covers to the decks. It's a mess to clean up and it takes forever to cure, but it cures tough and seals watertight. I came in with some bolts, nuts, and washers and put some real hardware to secure the hatches. It's a good idea to run a vacuum and a wet rag over your surface before you open up a can of paint. I put a coat of primer on the interior of the hatches just in case some water gets in there. It should make it easier to see something if it falls in. So far, using the boat, though, my hatches have been completely dry, but anything could happen. Finally, that rear seat top gets sealed on tight with PO Premium and some weights. Then the front edge gets a router to run it flush and then soften that edge. I did my seats and thwarts bright with varnish, so pencil marks come off with some light sanding. While I was in the area, I rounded off where the outwheel meets the transom piece. This would be a good time to clean up the gunnels at the bow as well. More thickened epoxy to fill the edges where my seats and deck meet the side panels. Remember, earlier in the build I said the epoxy makes the fitment good when I'm too lazy to make it good myself? This is what I was talking about. Epoxy is brittle, so when your mess cures, a chisel can clean it up. But some people probably do it better the easy way with the heat gun and then just scrape it off. I wanted to put something durable with some traction on my main thwart. I wanted to give my dog something to grip when she's up there because when my boat heels to about 30 degrees, she just slides to leeward. I didn't want her tumbling over in a gust, so I did a poor man's fiberglass coat. So I didn't want her tumbling over in a gust, so I did some poor man's fiberglass on that main thwart. Just some plain cotton duck fabric and wood glue. I might have done a better job by rolling the glue first because I only wanted half the fabric to be soaked in glue to leave a softer surface on top because I paint over the top. Even with the paint, it just quickly developed a patina through use. I don't mind it too much. I don't mind the boat showing some use though, and I'm happy with it so far. Tape off surfaces that will get a bright finish, and then 2 coats of an oil-based primer and 1 or 2 coats of oil-based paint. This is really an area where guys disagree about this, like what finishing products to use. I've come to really like the white gloss Rust-Oleum oil-based enamel. For me, it gets some really durable finishes. The boat's going to do one more kickflip. First, halfway upside down to prep and finish the bottom. Remove all the screws, use a router to flush cut and then round over the opening to the daggerboard trunk. carefully cleaning up that PL premium that squeezed out, and careful not to cut into the aft edge of the opening too deep. Round over the chines. The softer the round over on the chines, the easier it'll be to fiberglass. And the softer that curve is, the better performance the boat is going to get. But you can't make it so round that it weakens your chine lock joint. A light to medium sanding with about 150 grit to make a good surface for epoxy and primer to stick to. It's a last chance to clean up some squeeze out where nobody will ever see it. I had some ply on the transom come apart, so I glued that back and sanded it flush. Vacuum the whole thing, wipe it clean, and you're ready for epoxy. Epoxy to fill screw holes and plywood imperfections. I came in and dabbed all those holes with unthickened epoxy before coming back with thickened epoxy, and just the careful amount of pressure with the plastic scraper to flush it, to scrape it flush, and then clean up that extra epoxy and put it all to use. And then fiberglass, a pain in the butt. It seems easy to do until you actually do it and you realize there's 1,000 ways to screw it up. I was trying to get as much of my materials as possible from the hardware store, so I bought some of that 3M fiberglass cloth, that packaged 3M fiberglass cloth, when I should have just bought like 7 yards from Duckworks and avoided cutting it into puzzle pieces. If I was more concerned with the pristine finish on this, I would have done a better job cleaning up those epoxy runs and feathering out the seams. Fiberglass turned out pretty good though, from a functional perspective. It should keep water out and keep the sole from getting too banged up. You have to lightly to moderately sand it with about 150 grit paper before putting paint down, because the paint needs a texture to stick to, and that cured epoxy is just too slick. Tape on the gunnels, 2 coats of primer, and then this beautiful blue oil-based satin enamel. The oil takes a day before you can put on a second coat, and then a week to cure hard enough to really handle, but I got it down just in time to go out of town for a week, and that made some artificial patience on a boat that's getting really close to getting in the water. Then the boat finishes that kickflip and prep for varnish. I put PL Premium into open voids on the ply, but many would rightfully prefer thickened epoxy. I soaked canvas duck drop cloth in Titebond 3 to make mast step pads in both of the mast steps up front. Varnish is also a pain, but it's just so pretty. Some people put on a dozen coats, but this boat was going to reside under a cover, so I only did 2. If you're not careful to come back again and again to wipe up the runs on the inside and outside of your hull, that varnish will dry yellow streaks down your paint. That's one thing that I can't stand the look of, even with my low standards of finish work. So come back, wipe it 2 or 3 more times than you think you need to. If you come back and there's still streaks, then you're going to have to come back again. Finish work, though, for now, it's kind of done. I'm going to try to go over where all the cleats and blocks and stuff are. First, I got 2 blocks up on top of that main mast, and I've got 1 block 7 feet up on the main mast. This is my snotter tension. My snotter, I just put a screw 7 feet up, and then this is a soft shackle, and that way you can take that off in a pinch. You do risk tearing up your sail on there though. Okay, moving down the mast. I've got 1 cleat for a downhaul on the port side. You can see that tack on there. I've got main halyard running up in the middle, and you got to make sure that this has enough space to clear that when it swings, and that's how low that goes. Then, so I've got 2 blocks for my snotter. Let me look at that snotter line. Runs from here up to here, and then down through here, and then moving back that cleat on the back of the deck allows me to adjust snodder tension. Uh-oh, mailman's coming. So, we don't have any wind right now, but I can adjust that tension as needed. I'll keep moving back. I got another cleat. Oh, yeah. On the back. Let me calm my dog down. Alright, mailman's gone. So, that snodder line, if I'm single-handing, then I'll run that snodder line back to that cleat. That is one of two. On the back of here, I'll put a main haul cleat, snodder cleat. Then I'll put a main sheet on that cleat below if I'm running single-handed. This cleat up front is really to cleat off this dagger board if I need to. I've got my tholes, so let me see. So edge, fingertip, roughly where my oar is going to be. It's okay. I might like it a little bit closer, but I'm happy with it. It's not uncomfortable. Just in front of that frame that's kind of centered, in this cockpit area, I put a cleat on both sides, just behind those tholes, and then moving aft of that one on the port side is to run that line through an eye right there that runs under the tiller to an eye right here that runs and just gets tied off on the starboard side. That's my tiller tamer. What else? I've got my boomkin step right here. Mizzen hardware. Okay, mizzen, an eye that is really below the transom, just to give me some extra room to tack that mizzen sail. That I ran it through that eye and then to this cleat right here. You could probably just tie it off on that eye if you wanted to. So I've got this kind of crowded with cleats. This higher cleat, this is my halyard, and then below it was that tension we just looked at. Right now, on the starboard side, I've got this cleat that is for the snodder on this mizzen. So I'll see if I trim that up though. This mizzen's so small that it just shoves that mizzen straight. Okay, making a mess. Okay, what else? I've got one block at the top of the mizzen mast, wrapping that mizzen sail down, tied off to the sail through one block on the boomkin, and then that allows me to run this mizzen sheet up to this starboard cleat, and I think that is all my hardware on here. The tiller extension is attached by drilling some holes and using a piece of wire to run a line through it all. The aft face of the mast gets a cleat as low as you can get it and still clear that aft mast partner gate. Mine is too low in this shot, and I had to relocate it up a couple inches. This is the second halyard lead. I run a second halyard on the main just to do a handful of things in a pinch. On the port face of the mast, a downhaul cleat gets as low as you can clear the deck and easily wrap a downhaul line. It just needs space to cleat off that downhaul. The head of the mast gets a hole for blocks. This needs to be pretty darn near the head of the mast. The mast at 13 feet long is a snug fit when it's shipped inside the hull. But that 13-foot mast has just a little bit of space to haul that mainsail in. Like I said, it's a tight fit. If you attach the halyard blocks right at the head, though, you risk it splitting out. So you can carefully wrap the attachment cordage and attach it pretty high up to try to fight these factors. Finally, rowing hardware. I make 2 thole plates just from tie strap that I cut in half. The thole pins are 9-inch spikes. I drill some holes in them for some cotter pins. They aren't as pretty as wooden tholes, but they're sturdy, and the little nail head keeps the line from easily falling off. Clamping these plates allows me to drill a hole for bolts and nylon lock nuts to hold them in place. And I'm happy with this rowing system. A criticism of shipping oars hanging over the whales like this is that they can get in the sheets, and the sheets will get caught on them. On a boat this small, I'll take that trade-off to avoid organizing cockpit space around oars. A wooden boat like this, you don't really finish working on it. You just kind of transition from building to maintenance. As far as the boat goes, the hull, the end of this chapter marks that transition. You could take it out for a row right now. If you made a sprit, you could throw up some canvas tarps as a sprit sail. That 6x8 will put up 48 square feet of sail, and it won't move it too quick or too far to windward. That 8x10 canvas tarp will go in that forward step, and it's going to be more sail than you want up, but the center of effort will be low enough that it won't be too bad, and that'll probably get you a little bit to windward in light airs. I would not take that out like that in heavy winds, especially with it way up front like that. It's just going to pull you away from the wind. But I wanted to get a bit more performance out of this, so I'm making sails out of Dacron in the next chapter, and that is going to be the end of the build.